Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nate, and welcome back to another weather forecast discussion, this time from March 20th, 2025. Now, we're going to be talking about some severe weather on the horizon, but we want to get through some of our severe weather outlooks before we get to that. Make sure if you guys haven't already, hit that thumbs up button down below. It helps us get onto the YouTube algorithm, and of course, we can get this video out to more people who could potentially be impacted. Today, here on Thursday, we have some thunderstorms that are possible across portions of the mid-Atlantic, as well as portions up into the northern Rockies, into the high plains. But we do have some interesting fire weather risks that are here, including over here into areas of southeastern Florida. So the potential of wildfires is definitely possible across some of these areas, as well as even into portions of New Mexico and northern Texas. But we do have also the chance for some thunderstorms tomorrow here on Friday. Some thunderstorms are possible over here from the Ohio Valley into the Midwest, as well as portions up here of the Pacific Northwest. So you guys definitely have some stuff that could be, potentially be possible. And then we start to see some severe weather start to come back up again. We have a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale over here into portions of the Central Plains into the Ozarks. And then we have a 2 out of 5 that ranges all the way up from southern Kentucky all the way through into Tennessee, down into the deep south, and then finally into portions of Texas, potentially into the areas near or around Dallas, Fort Worth, as well as southeast of that into Houston. So if you guys live in some of these areas, definitely something to consider, at least over the next few days. Now let's take a look at the timings of these storms. Once again, the top left-hand portion of your screen, all the way up here is where we typically look for our timings in Eastern. So if you live in any other areas, then of course translate accordingly. We currently have the remnants of our system that's currently moving on through that produced the severe weather yesterday. We have a good bit of snow that's over here in portions of Canada, as well as the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. Our new bunch of moisture, hard to really call it an atmospheric river, but it technically is kind of an atmospheric river. You can see there's a lot of moisture that's basically sitting over that area, and it is just continuing to dump rain and snow in higher elevations. So there's definitely a lot of precipitation that's building more and more up there into the Pacific Northwest. By the time we get towards the end of the weekend, we actually have a little weaker system that starts to move on through, almost kind of like a clipper system, if you will, to where we have some snow in the northern parts, and then we have our residual severe weather in the south. Of course, the typical more precipitation up in the Pacific Northwest. Honestly, it's just that type of season where you're going to see a lot of precipitation over and over and over again. But then as we head on through, that system starts to move on through on Sunday. We got some extended severe weather that kind of just lingers here. We have a lot of thunderstorms that are just going to continue to sit over the area. There's just going to be this elongated boundary that'll just continue to just basically feed into the potential for some severe thunderstorms across the board. So this is definitely something to watch out for. Of course, that you can glaringly see that the storm near the low pressure system, the amount of precipitation that's over there is first off in the wintry kind, and second off in somewhat heavy amounts of snow for portions of Ontario as well as the Great Lakes. Before we have a little bit of a cool down here before our next system, we have our next low pressure system that's going to create some severe weather kind of in the same area, to be honest with you. There's a potential for some severe weather in the same exact area sometime around Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, as we start to head into the latter stages of March before we finally get, I guess it's this weird version of a nor'easter. We have some severe weather that could be along the coastline, or maybe it's even some strong winds here heading into portions of New England, with some areas over here potentially even seeing some snow, as well as maybe even some heavy snow to potentially be possible heading into those areas. But now things start to get a little bit calm. We have another clipper system that'll move on through heading into the end of next week. And the severe weather, it kind of just is around. It is around up until the end of next week, I would say. The potential of a wintry precipitation event is possible here over the next few days across the northern half of the United States. So definitely something that is an interesting trend. We have all this severe weather, and then all of a sudden we start to have a little bit of rain, or an additional amount of rain, heavy rain, and then we also start to see some heavy snow that really starts to rear its head and try to create its last hurrah before we officially move on from winter. Something that is not moving on here is the amount of precipitation that we have up here in the Pacific Northwest. Flash flooding is definitely possible. Some rock slides and mudslides are also definitely possible because of it. As the ground gets saturated more and more, the potential for those things are absolutely possible. And that'll just continue to sit. This is the precipitation over the span of 72 hours. I am moving my needle over and over and over again. And this stays relatively consistent until the beginning of next week, to where we have just an abundance of rain that just sits over the area. It truly does sit over the area, and that'll just continue to build and build more and more and more. And then there's also the potential here, at least according to this model, we'll have to watch out for it a little bit more as we go along. But there is some precipitation that starts to build over here in southern Texas as well as northeastern Mexico. So we'll definitely have to see as to what that could potentially be as we head on. We'll take a look at the 24-hour snowfall totals. This is the total amount of snow that some could potentially get within the span of 24 hours. As I said, up here in the Pacific Northwest, there's going to be a lot of precipitation, but in those higher elevations, you could absolutely get some significant amounts of snow. So don't think it's a last hurrah for some ski resorts that could be up there. There is definitely the potential for you guys to continue to be open, doors open, and still get an abundance amount of snow. You can even see as we head into the beginning of next week, that still is the case. A lot of snow that's potentially possible over here. But here's our next Clipper system that moves on through. Around the same time we get our severe weather in the south, and we could see some localized amounts in upwards of about a foot. So there's definitely the chance for some snow here in western Michigan, as well as portions of Wisconsin, Minnesota, even into northern Michigan as well before it heads off. And then the potential for our next system becomes really interesting here as we talk about our nor'easter. Areas over here in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, even into portions of Massachusetts, as well as into areas of Quebec. There is definitely the chance for some snow here, maybe some heavy amounts of snow that can get up to about a foot as well. We're still a little bit far away before we can talk about the specific snowfall totals here within this particular storm. The big thing here to watch out, though, is sometime around the 26th and the 27th. That's when that snow could potentially return for areas over here in the northeast. So now we'll get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty. It's hard for us to exactly, pinpoint specific characteristics within the storm that's going to be coming up this weekend, but we can kind of get a general idea, the general pattern of what's going to be happening, so that way we can kind of guesstimate as to what could happen. So we'll take a look at the 500 millibar wind shear, which is about 6 kilometers above ground level. The timing, once again, top left-hand portion. Here's the remnants of our low-pressure system. We can see we got this trough, this dip in the jet stream, that kind of arcs down south and moves its way back up to the north again. And then we have this ridge right behind it. And this is going to be a very typical pattern. You can kind of already see there's even a ridge out in front of this too. And it's just going to be this wavy jet stream. It really is just going to be this wavy jet stream to where we'll have storms and then a break. Storms and then a break. And we'll move on through storms and then a break. All right. You can kind of see already a little bit of a break. And then it'll just continue to wave up and down and up and down. So Friday into Saturday, storms, all right, that are potentially possible here Friday into Saturday as we see our system move on through. And then a break. Saturday night specifically, storms potentially possible with our little mini trough here. Notice how storms are possible across areas out in front of the dip. There's also a little mini dip right in here, just a little mini one. And right on the leading edge of that dip is where we see a lot of our severe weather. And so storms, okay, and then storms again here on Sunday as we get a much more well-pronounced trough that starts to move on through the area. And then after that, we get a break, especially for areas over here in the western United States. A big high-pressure system. Expect a lot of warming in areas over here in the southwest because there's just definitely going to be enough of that. But then a break. Once again, break. And then we start to get into Tuesday. Big trough that starts to just sit over the area, but it's not really organized. And if you were to try and ask me as to where the severe weather could be, What I typically look for is where the maximum amount of wind shear is, the strongest amount of wind shear. I look at that and then I say, okay, out in front of that is more than likely where there's going to be some severe weather. And so right in here, right in this area is where I would typically look out for. The reason why I extend the box a little bit further down towards the Gulf is because there's just a lot of moisture that typically is out in front of these storms, and the moisture can extend all the way out into the Gulf because that's where the moisture is coming from. So when you take that into account, that basically tells us that right in that area is the open warm sector. Of course, we'll show you guys in the dew points a little bit later, but you can see the trough digs on through, and then we get another break. Look at that. Another ridge that sits over much of the United States. This is our clipper system, to be honest with you, here, heading towards the 28th and the 29th. We could potentially see some strong damaging winds associated with that, maybe some blizzard-like conditions with that clipper system before we start to really see things kind of move on through. And look at that. Our low pressure system actually deepens significantly, heading into our potential nor'easter. Yes, potential nor'easter once again. I'm still finding it hard to believe as we head into April. My goodness, April. And then we can potentially see, once again, a return to maybe some severe weather heading into April. But until then, we have this break, and then we get some storms again. And you'll see that with our temperatures. Out in front of where there's supposed to be severe weather, it's going to be warm. It's going to be pretty warm. And you can see that here as we head into Thursday. We get some warm temperatures that start to build out in front of our system. And then anywhere there's a bit of a break, you can start to see the warm temperatures start to rise back up again. All right. But out in this area here, all this cold weather, this is the cold air that comes in behind the low pressure system and cools everything down. And so we get our break. Our warm air starts to build up again. It'll continue to build up more and more and more. And then as soon as we get those storms, we can start to see, look at that, cold air starts to move on through. We talked about this snow system, once again, going across the Great Lakes. It starts to get cold over here along the Great Lakes, all right? Warm air continues to build more and more and more. And then look at this. Boom. It starts to wash its way out. Cold air starts to return. It still starts to get pretty warm across much of the Gulf Coast heading into the southeast, as well as even the southern plains. But there's our break, all right? And then it'll start to build up warm and warm again. Next week, I mentioned it's going to get stupid hot across areas over here in the southwest. It will get stupid hot. We're probably talking about 90s to maybe even approaching the hundreds already. All right, that is crazy. We're starting to get to that time of year to where we're getting into the hundreds again. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. But it'll get pretty hot here. Big heat wave down in the Pacific Southwest. So definitely something to watch out as we continue to get closer to those events. So our moisture we talked about with our severe storms, we can see that moisture start to, build back up. We really are going to be watching out for how moist this environment gets. But as this heads over into Saturday, all right, we don't really have too much moisture across these areas. We're talking about dew points in and around the mid 50s. And that's just enough for, some marginal severe weather. That's kind of the reason why they just only have the 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. And I really don't anticipate that to change. At worst, it could be upgraded to a 2 out of 5. But I really don't believe that anything more than that is going to come out from that particular event on Saturday. Here on Sunday, however, you can start to see our dew points start to really crank up into about the 60s. Of course, with northern extent, it could be a little bit less than that. We'll have to see in some of the higher resolution models what it could say over here for portions of Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. I'm really interested to see if this could actually be wrong and moisture could actually be higher in some of your areas. And of course, that would be accompanied by the risk for some severe weather as well. Heading into Tuesday, we mentioned there was the potential for some severe weather. You can once again see moisture is definitely in abundance in some of these areas. And that's the reason why I said from areas that are about, I would say, central to northern Arkansas all the way down to the Gulf Coast, that's where you could potentially see some severe weather there as well. We do have some convective available potential energy for Saturday. It's not too much, but it will more than likely look to be some form of overnight event for some thunderstorms that are possible. So, once again, folks that are in Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas will definitely have to watch out for the potential of some severe weather that's possible. But this is where we start to move on through into Sunday. You can see our convective available energy, our buoyancy in the atmosphere becomes pretty ripe for thunderstorms. It's almost like an apple in season, and all the thunderstorms have to do is just pick that apple off of the tree, and then it's good product, good produce that is ended up able to be sent elsewhere. And so that is basically what happens. We have a lot of energy that sits into this environment. Thunderstorms definitely are going to be able to take advantage of that. And then look at Tuesday here. Look at this. Some energy will still be possible here. Some good buoyancy here on Tuesday. And so the potential for some severe weather is definitely looking like it's probable. I'm not saying fully that it is likely. It is just still probable right now. Some things can change in the models, but the signal is there. It definitely looks like there could potentially be some of that. So overnight, once again, heading into Sunday from Saturday, we have the potential for some severe weather or some thunderstorms that are possible. This is what's going to be really interesting, in my opinion. As we head into Sunday, look at how widespread these thunderstorms are. It extends over here from portions of western Indiana all the way down into eastern Kentucky, all the way down through into central Texas. This is as widespread as you possibly can get it for some severe weather to be possible. And notice we have a lot of thunderstorms. I'm talking about a lot of thunderstorms that continue to move on through. The other thing I want you guys to notice here is if we go back to our dew points, we go back to the orientation of where the boundary is. Notice the boundary is kind of diagonal. It starts from the southwest, moves up towards the northeast. If we go back to our wind shear here and we go back in time, our wind shear here is actually oriented in kind of a similar fashion, to be honest with you. We have our wind shear that's moving from the southwest to the northeast, and that kind of tells me that anything that's along the boundary of our strong thunderstorms here will probably be a lot of wind and a lot of hail, and any sort of tornado threat will have to be with storms that are out in the open warm sector, so out in front of this main line. Unless if there could be some weird storm mergers that could potentially happen where thunderstorms could try to combine. So that is just kind of just the general idea of what I'm seeing here. That could potentially change as we get closer, but you can absolutely see some big time thunderstorms start to move on through, especially down into portions of Louisiana. That is definitely something that we're going to have to watch out for. And then here's Tuesday. Once again, you can see an abundance of severe weather once again starts to move off into portions of the southern Ozarks as well as into the deep south. So definitely some interesting severe storms and some setups that are going to be possible heading up into next week. But we'll have it here for you all. We'll cover it to the best of our abilities and make sure that you guys stay aware. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also, follow me on social media. Link will be in the description down below. I will catch you guys tomorrow with our next video. So stay safe up until then, and peace out.